Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, so today we're going to be talking about your professional quality of life. Specifically, are you satisfied with your work? Or are you more fatigued? Which, feeling that kind of right now. So, we got to do this one. Or not. Okay, so let's play a little bit of word association to get us kind of started, okay? When you think of that word, or when you see that word, what do you think of?
No.
You don't have to tell me.
I think of cow.
Large. Do you
cow,
think of
yeah.
this sweet little guy? This makes me happy, so I think I'm going to print this out and put this in my office. Sweet little cow. Do you think of maybe that? Some Chick-fil-A cow? Or do you think of a nice, juicy, medium well filet? No? No, nobody in here is vegetarian, right? Because I actually stole this from somebody else, and somebody was making a comment, like, that's not very nice. Vegetarian, I think it looks delicious. Okay, so we're going to move on. That was just to get your juices flowing. So when you think of this, what's the first thought that comes to your mind?
Sigh.
Okay. Do you think, woo, this is,
That looks like us in the counseling department.
yeah. I love my life. I love work. I love everybody here. Oh my gosh, it's so great. No. Do you think that?
No.
We've had some students accent.
Yeah. What about, yes, I am a rock star. I rocked that report or that lesson plan or whatever. I am so awesome.
No.
You don't know? Yeah. Like,
Some days.
Some days? Okay. I suspect that some of you may feel like this. Okay, so this poor guy, he's needing 6 arms, 4 legs. He's sweaty, he's running, he's trying to beat the clock, I think. He's got papers trailing around, he's all disorganized. He has a wrench, and I can't figure out why he has a wrench exactly, except maybe to fix some things. But anyway, that's how I feel a lot of days, and I figured most people kind of feel like that too. So what we're going to talk about today is what's the difference between feeling satisfied with your job and feeling fatigued? I think on the surface, you kind of sort of instinctually know the difference. You know if you're happy or you know if you're not feeling so great. But specifically, what is the difference between those two terms? And so you guys will be able to leave here today and you will know the difference between those terms. We're going to take a little quiz to help you figure out whether you are satisfied with your job or maybe you need to go find another one. No, we're not doing that. I'm just kidding. There's not enough room in this area. So, all right. So when you leave here today, you'll know the difference, like I said, between the two. We'll talk more specifically about what those two look like. We'll look at where your levels are for each one, and then you guys will leave today with one component. We're going to start working on a self-care plan. So for the purposes of today, we only have time to work on one component of that, with the idea of subsequent meetings we can add to the self-care plan. Okay? So underneath your professional quality of life, and that is your job, we're here 8 hours a day. So the stuff that happens during the course of the day, you take home with you and can affect your outside life. So in this room, I'm just looking around, we're mothers, we are wives, we are sisters, friends, we are taking care of sick parents, we have dogs, we have all these things going on, and we have all this stuff that we deal with during the day. And it sort of leaks into us at home, right? I mean, that's probably fair to say. The two components that make up that professional quality of life would be that compassion, satisfaction. You're deriving pleasure from your work, and you're feeling energized, and you like things on a day-to-day basis. Or you can feel compassion fatigue, which has 2 kids So the two kids of compassion fatigue would be burnout, which I think most of us kind of know, again, instinctually what that is. And then secondary trauma. Now, secondary trauma is interesting. Secondary trauma has to do with, on a day-to-day basis, you're talking to people or you're dealing with really traumatic things, and you start to sort of absorb it as your own trauma. It's kind of rare, but it still can happen to where you, something really bad has happened to somebody, you've absorbed it, and now it's almost as if it has happened to you. So you might be frightful of whatever situation that person had, you avoid certain situations, that kind of thing. So while it is rare, it is something that we need to talk about. So again, just to kind of review, your compassion satisfaction, you're deriving a lot of pleasure from your work. You're feeling pretty dang okay. You feel like you're making a difference. You enjoy coming to work. Kind of get up in the morning and go, hey, it's great. Can't wait to get started. You feel super positive about your work. And then with the compassion fatigue, the burnout specifically is related to hopelessness, and you just don't feel like you're effective. You don't feel like you're making a difference. Every time you turn around, there is something, i.e. computer problems, or the student that you've been working with makes bad choices even though you felt like you made headway. So that would be related to the burnout, and then, like I mentioned before, the secondary trauma stress is more, if you look at the STS, or the secondary trauma stress, being afraid of a situation because you've absorbed what's happened to someone, burnout then would be you're just worn out. Afraid versus worn out. And I would suspect that a lot of us tend to feel more so that burnout. We're just, I need a break. I can't take it anymore. Not that you're afraid to come to work because of some things that have happened, okay? Okay, so do we feel like this? Or do we feel like this? How do we know? I love this one because I don't know. That just sort of sums up kind of how sometimes we feel, right? Okay. We're going to find out exactly how we feel, okay? Some of you have a pen. Do all of you have a pen? Yeah, get you a pen. We're going to take something called the ProQual. And the ProQual is a 30-item, which sounds like a lot, but it's really not. They're super easy questions. But it is a self-report measure that where you guys are going to read each statement, and you're going to say how you feel on a Likert scale. So 1 would be never, going all the way up to 5 very often. I have taken this twice now to kind of judge the time. It will only take you just a few minutes, but just read each thing carefully and then answer it as honestly as you can. Now, normally this is where, a teacher would walk around and check for understanding, and they're so simple, you're not going to have a hard time with that. And also, I wanted you guys to feel free to be honest on it, and I don't want to know what your scores are, and I don't want to know, you can take this when you guys leave. I just want you to be as honest as you can, and it's private. Okay?
Which makes a huge difference.
Yeah, I'm not going to report it back to your boss. Except my boss is in here right now, so she's not, and you're actually going to see my scores in a minute. Jamie, you need a pen?
Yes, please.
Okay. I need a pen too.
Okey dokies.
Check to make sure.
Thank you.
You're welcome. so we're gonna move on to where we are gonna score it, okay? And I'll walk you through that, because there's a piece that's just a tad bit confusing. All right, so on this page, what you're gonna do for your compassion satisfaction scale, you will, it has 3, 6, 12. What you're gonna do is find that particular question and enter what you have answered on your profile. So, like for instance, for me, on question number 3, I chose 4. Question number 6, I chose 3, and so on. And once you're done filling those in, you'll total that. Okay, are you guys ready to move on to the second part? No, it's okay. You moved it out, it's okay.
The
The burnout scale is a weird one, so that, I wanted to go through that one really quick with you.
Yeah,
So the
let's
burnout scale is kind of sort of the same concept, except the ones that have the stars beside them, there's a little chart down here. So you actually have to do, for instance, if, I don't know why there's no 1 there, but if you wrote 1, so we're at number 1, if you wrote 1, you would actually change it to a 5. So you're basically doing the inverse, and the reason why they do that is because saying that you're happy about the effects of helping when you're, you can read right here, it says, I am happy tells us more about the effects of helping when you're not happy, so you reverse the score. And there are only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of those that you would use the little chart for. And you might want to go a little bit slower on that one, because that one you get into a groove and you're writing your numbers down and you go, oh, I forgot to do the inverse. So once you're done with that, then you'll total up your scores, just like you did for the compassion satisfaction part.
We use the equal ones to total.
Yeah, so like right here for number 1, I answered 3 on my pro-qual quiz. So 3 corresponds to a 3.
Right.
So then I just did that.
That's what you use.
Yeah. And oh, here's a different one, because all of them were 3s. So for question 29, I answered 5, but it has the star beside it. So then I had to change it to the 1.
Okay.
Okay, and then for the final one, the secondary traumatic stress scale, or the STS scale, it's the same as the compassion satisfaction. So you just find those questions and write down, what you put on the quiz for those particular questions. Okay. Oh, do you need a little more time? Okay. All right, so, all right, you have these scores, but what do they mean? I mean, average, 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 okay, I feel average, but what if I didn't get average? Or what, I want to know more about what that means. So on the flip side of that paper, you can transfer the scores that you got on the front to those little paragraphs. And we'll go through those really quickly, so I'm kind of breaking my confidentiality and telling you what my scores are. So compassion satisfaction, the average score for that is 50. I should say that this particular quiz has excellent reliability and validity for statistical purposes. I was kind of surprised of my own score on all of those. So I got a 32, with the average score being 50. Now, you'll recall that compassion satisfaction just means that you really feel effective at your work and that you feel like you're doing a really great job. If you got in the higher range, then you do get a lot of personal satisfaction from your job. And if you got in the lower range, it's, for instance, if they're below 40, then you might find that you have a lot of problems in your job, or you are deriving your satisfaction elsewhere. It's not coming from your job, but maybe from your home life, stuff that you do on the outside. For burnout, I got a 33. 50 again is average. So, but it's still throwing me, according to their scale, I'm still in the average range. For burnout, if that's related to your negative feelings towards your job, and we talked about that earlier. You just don't feel as effective. You feel like you need a break. If you score below a 43, it probably reflects positive feelings about your ability to be effective in your work. But if you score above a 57, you may wish to think about what it is at work that makes you feel not effective. It may also reflect your mood that day. If you had a really cruddy day, it could also be, it's just 9:52, but things can happen. So if you did score below or above the 57, that you could be seeing that, or you just need some time off, and I think we all could probably use that. If you take this again in the future, and I do have more of these if you want to kind of keep up on how you're feeling, if your high score persists, or if maybe there's other things outside of work that's kind of compounding what you're doing here at work, it's kind of a good idea to seek the help of a professional outside of work. The secondary traumatic stress, I got a 23 on that. Again, the average on that scale is 50. If your score is above 57, you might want to take some time to think about what's really going on, because that would be a pretty high score. And they don't
necessarily mean that you have a problem, but it is something that you need to be thinking about, something that you need to reflect on, maybe examine a little bit more. Okay? I would imagine, again, this is pretty rare, but I do know that from what I've read, people who deal with rape victims, dealing with families who've had murders and stuff like that, those kinds of things, I think you see some really bad scores for those kinds of helping professions, but I wouldn't expect necessarily for us to have really bad scores in that area. Do you guys have any questions about any of that? About interpreting the scores or what they mean? No? Okay. So you know your scores, now what do you do? Whether or not you were, really average or high on the job satisfaction or compassion satisfaction, I should say, that's great. If you were, that's awesome. I'm kind of jealous if you were high on that scale. If you were low on that scale, then, obviously we can do some things maybe to bring that number up. But regardless, you could use a self-care plan. Everybody has bad days and good days. So a self-care plan, which is what we're going to work on right now, has 6 parts. So today we'll work on the physical part, but the rest of those encompass the emotional area, and that's how well do you take care of your feelings? How well do you regulate your emotions? The spiritual part of it has to do with what kinds of things do you do to keep perspective, thinking about a higher power, that sort of thing. Cognitive would have to deal with what kinds of things do you do to feed your mind? Do you read? Do you take any classes outside of work? Those kinds of things.
social, are you making sure that you're around other people and taking time to do fun things? And then financial, are you being responsible with saving and spending? Because those things do have a direct impact on how you feel overall. Okay? We're gonna work on that physical one today. And so as we do that, I want you guys to think about 3 things that you can do or already do for the physical part of your self-care plan. I'll give you an example before you guys get started. So back in July, I started working out, and I was working out every day, and it was mostly for vanity reasons, I think, because I was putting on some weight and I wanted to keep that from happening. I didn't have any energy, I felt really blah, so I don't even know how I made myself do this, but I did. Started working out every day, and I started to notice something. I started to notice that my mind was clearer, that I was working off the stress, and that it sort of, when I figured out that, I feel better about things, it motivated me to keep doing it again. Now, at the age I'm at, I can't keep up doing every day. I figured that out too. Couldn't walk, I was feeling very sore. But I'm still doing it every other day. And I've noticed that I feel really bad mentally when I don't do it. So that's just my example, but I kind of want to hear what yours might be. It could include sleeping an extra hour, or going to bed early, taking a walk with the dog. I mean, I just want to kind of hear maybe what you guys already do or what you would really like to do so that we can encourage you to get that done. So I gave you like 30 seconds to a minute just to think about it. If you want to write it down, you can. And then we're going to, if you're okay with it, we're going to put it on the board. Okay? Assuming that this works. You have some, you already have? Oh, yes, Courtney.
I think it's important, especially with our jobs, for all of us, we're kind of desk driven, and I think just taking a physical walk and taking a break during the day can kind of help take care of our physical part. Even if it's just to walk down the hall to get a student instead of calling them out of class. I think that's important.
Well, this is really way off.
That's supposed to be a K.
You got it. Doing well.
Well, okay, that's weird. All right. It's like a second grader wrote that. Okay, any others?
In stretching,
Stretching?
like when you get in the morning, how they say you're supposed to stretch like a cat.
Oh, yeah.
That's stretching.
Okay,
That's a good one.
okay. Let's do, well, how about let's do one that occurs maybe after work?
Been trying to go outside and just unplug, like go to the beach and just kind of sit and relax. We went to the mountains a few weeks ago and just really tried to get out into nature.
Time with nature.
Get out. Run for your life. Get out. All right, that's supposed to be a T. Well, whatever. Okay. So, I mean, that kind of, we doing something, right? Just being active. Stretching, you pretty much do whenever. Getting out, during work, that might be, we could maybe tie that in with the walking around if we got out on a nice day and walked around the building, okay? Those are all really great. I guess because that's there, let's move on. Well, what kind of barriers do you have? So that's what we're going to talk about, because we all can come up with great ideas, but it's the actual doing that's the sticking point, right? So we can tell ourselves all these things, we can talk ourselves out of it, in other words. So thinking back to Courtney's example, walking around, well, what would be a barrier to getting up and away from our desk? What kinds of barriers?
My brain, sorry.
Yeah. We have a steady flow of people. There's really not a downtime.
So there's a hard time to figure out when we could actually get away from our desk.
But you just have to be mindful of it. So if you're not mindful of it and you have that 5 minutes, you're sitting there, you're de-stressing in your head, you think, but really you should get up and walk around. But
Right.
you gotta get in that mindset. to do it.
Get out, change of scenery,
Right.
put this over there,
Right.
you get out of
You
the.
have to make it a priority in your head, so you will do it when you get that 5 minutes.
And I guess that would be my question, how do we make it a priority? That would
We
be.
use our Outlook calendar to set, maybe, a lot of us have Apple Watches, but the little thumps to get up and stand, maybe we set some
Oh,
timers.
yeah. Okay. So actively scheduling that time so that we know, oh, sorry, I gotta have a meeting. Have a meeting down the hall, I'll be back.
Or maybe doing it at lunch, like
Right.
after you eat, or before you eat, really would probably be better.
Mm-hmm.
So before you sit down for that 30 minutes, take
It's
a
good
little walk.
health.
It is a good health one, yeah. The stretching, like I said, I don't know that there are any barriers, except you just have to remember to do it, you know.
There's a lot of apps that you can download for the
Yeah.
stretching, to kind of set your alarm to that.
Stretch. And just getting out, so if we're getting out while we're here at work, we already talked about a way we can sort of do that. And then I guess outside of work, just making sure that you do set that priority, that you maybe put something on the calendar. And don't be like me, say, oh, I'm gonna go this weekend, and then I don't go. I'll go next weekend, and then I don't go. So I'm all preachy up here, but I'm learning, just like you guys. So I'm gonna do better. So I hope you will too. So just to kind of wrap up, the State Department, I want to tell you this before we do the wrap up. So the State Department has been working with teachers on how to identify whether or not they have compassion fatigue. And they're doing a great job with that from what I understand, but they're not talking about any strategies that people can use. So they're basically walking out the door and they know, oh yeah, I'm burnt out, or yeah, my life is great. They know that, but they don't really know what to do with it. So they don't know, how can I keep feeling great, or how can I mitigate those effects of the burnout? And that's where that self-care plan comes in. So if you build it, and then part of what's really cool about us is that we can encourage each other, and if we do come back together, when we do come back together, we can congratulate Courtney for getting up and walking around before lunch, or we can say, hey Jamie, that's great that you went to the beach, that's awesome, I bet you felt really great afterwards. So we can kind of all come together and support one another as you implement your self-care plan. We learned at the beginning what compassion fatigue was and what compassion satisfaction was. You guys know, hopefully you have a better understanding for exactly where you lie on that scale. I suspect that most of you walked in already. I think, in other words, your scores are probably not a surprise to you. Or maybe they are, because mine were. I thought mine were going to be a little bit worse than what they were. But that's kind of a good thing, because maybe you can take some perspective and go, okay, all right, I'm not as bad as I thought, and this is going to get me through the next couple of weeks or however long, right? So my hope is at least that you will try something new this coming week, something physical on that self-care plan, and at least that you'll have a little more awareness of kind of where you are, to have a little takeaway. Okay. Do you guys have any questions?
This was very helpful, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, I hope you have some insight. That was our goal.